Hey guys, today we're reacting to her story, How I Love My Abusive Ex-Boyfriend. Welcome to Poxtober Reacts. Make sure to like and subscribe, and make sure to like and subscribe to my other channel, Poxtober, my main channel. Make sure to like and subscribe to her story and support her. And without further ado, let's watch the video and see how interesting this might be, or not. If you don't want to watch this, click off.
So the waiter comes back with the wrong plate for the third time, and my mom stands up and says, "Sir, I have been patient, but if you bring me another piece of salmon, I am going to set this restaurant on fire." The whole living room fell apart. Leah bent over the arm of the couch, wheezing. Dev pressed his face into his hands. Brianna spit her drink back into her cup and slapped the cushion. I stood in the middle of the living room with a drink in one hand and the other in the air, doing my mom's face. 12 people leaned in. I was exactly where I belonged. And the waiter goes, "Ma'am, this is your salmon." And my mom looks down at the plate and goes, "Can you shut up?" The room died. Jake stood in the kitchen doorway, gripping a beer with his jaw clenched and his eyes flat like someone had switched him off. "I'm serious. Every party, every dinner, you have to be the center of attention with your little stories, and I am sick of it." Nobody moved. Leah's mouth hung open and Dev's hands dropped to his sides. The humiliation hit my face so fast, I gripped the glass hard enough to feel the stem bend, and I set it down on the coffee table next to the book I brought before it snapped in my hand. My lipstick left a print on the rim. I looked at Jake, and my first instinct was to scream back and match his volume and win. But something clicked into place behind my teeth. He told me to shut up in front of 12 people, and not one part of his face looked like he thought he'd done something wrong. I ran my tongue across the back of my teeth and swallowed the punchline whole. If he could figure out what he did without me spelling it out for him, maybe there was something worth saving. If he couldn't, I had my answer. Leah grabbed my hand on the porch and squeezed it so hard her knuckles went white. "You set up this entire party by yourself. You carried the speakers and made the playlist and set up everything. And he screamed at you for telling a story." I pressed my other palm flat over my own mouth because the anger filled my chest so fast that if I opened my mouth, it would come out as a scream and I would never stop. I climbed into the passenger seat, and the click of the seatbelt was the last sound I made that night. He turned on the radio, and I reached over and turned it off because if I couldn't talk, then he didn't get to fill the silence with music. "Oh, come on," he smacked the steering wheel. "It was a joke. Everyone makes jokes." I folded my hands in my lap and dug my thumbnails into my palms and listened to every word, looking for the one that sounded like sorry. He ran a red light without noticing because he was too busy defending himself to watch the road. "You embarrass me all the time with those stories. Do I freak out? No, because I'm a grown-up." Not once in the entire car ride did he say the word wrong. He explained why it was fine. I stared through the windshield and thought, "Keep talking, Jake. You're answering the question and you don't even know it." Inside, he threw his keys at the counter and they hit the flowers I bought and knocked the vase over. Water and petals spread across the counter. I picked up the vase and righted it and wiped the water with a dish towel and picked petals off the floor one by one. He stood in the doorway, watching me clean up his mess without offering to help. "You're seriously not going to say anything?" I brushed my teeth and washed my face and pulled the blanket to my chin. He stood in the bedroom doorway calling me ridiculous, and I rolled onto my side facing the wall and pressed my face into the pillow. He still hadn't said sorry. He'd had the whole car ride, and he'd watched me clean water off the counter he knocked over, and his best response was to call me ridiculous. I pressed my face deeper into the pillow. If he figured it out by morning, I would talk to him, but he had to get there himself. The smoke alarm screamed the next morning because Jake burned the eggs. He stood on a chair flapping at the smoke detector with a dish towel, and for a split second, my mouth twitched toward a laugh because he looked pathetic. I bit it back and carried my coffee to the living room. He hadn't earned my laugh yet. That night, he set a container of Thai food in front of me like he was proud of himself, and I pushed it back without touching the chopsticks. He looked down. His mouth fell open. "You're allergic to shrimp." He shoved it toward the trash and missed. Shrimp scattered across the kitchen floor. I got on my knees and started picking them up one by one. 2 years of cooking for him every night, and he ordered me the one thing that could send me to the hospital. He didn't know what could kill me, and he didn't know what he did wrong at the party, and I was on my knees on his kitchen floor wondering what he knew about me at all. Jake bought a new tie for the work dinner because his annual review was in 2 weeks, and he needed this to go well. His fingers kept slipping on the buttons, and he turned to me and said, "I need this dinner, Cora." And for a second, he looked almost human, but the desperation was about his annual review, not about me. We walked into the restaurant, and his boss's wife smiled at me. "Cora, we've been dying to meet you." I smiled and tilted my head. She waited. The waiter asked if I wanted still or sparkling, and I pointed at the water pitcher because opening my mouth for even one word felt like pulling a pin. The silence stretched across the white tablecloth. Jake jumped in too fast with a laugh that was a beat too loud. "She's a little under the weather tonight." The boss's wife reached across the table and touched my hand. Her fingers were warm, and my throat tightened because a woman I'd known for 3 minutes could see me more clearly than the man I'd lived with for 2 years. She folded her napkin. "I think we should call call it a night. Jake grabbed my arm in the parking garage. You just tanked my promotion. Not, are you okay? Not, what's wrong? Not, I'm sorry about the party, his career. I removed his hand from my arm finger by finger and walked to the car feeling tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. My mom called while I folded laundry, and I held the phone and watched it ring. My thumb hovered over the green button. One word to my mother, and the whole dam would break, and I wasn't ready to break because Jake still hadn't figured it out. 6 rings, and then voicemail. Hey honey, just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while. Call me when you get a chance. Love you. I pressed the phone against my chest and squeezed my eyes shut. She called the next day, and the next, and each voicemail landed heavier. I picked up the phone. My thumb touched the green button. I put it down, picked it up again, and pressed it against my forehead. Put it down. I put the phone in a drawer and closed it, and stood there with my hand on the drawer and my throat aching. The silence was supposed to be a test for Jake, and it started to punish everyone except him. His boss put him on a performance improvement plan, and Jake swept his arm across the kitchen counter and sent every mug crashing to the floor. This is your fault. I flipped a page. He could break every mug in the kitchen, and the answer would still be the same. He brought flowers and posted them to Instagram, making it right. She's worth fighting for. Leah sent me a screenshot with one word: unbelievable. He sat on the edge of the bed and said, just tell me what you need. And I looked at him because this was it. This was the closest he'd come. Tell me you screamed at me in front of 12 people for telling a story. Tell me you told me to shut up and you shouldn't have. He reached for my hand. I'll do anything except say the words. I turned a page and he went to the guest room. Then came the rage. He stood in the bathroom doorway screaming while I put on mascara with a steady hand, because the steadier I was, the louder he got. This is manipulation. This is abusive. He grabbed my lipstick and threw it at the mirror, and it left a red streak across the glass. I picked up a different one and kept going. He grabbed my book off the nightstand and threw it against the wall, and the spine cracked. I picked it up and smoothed the pages because that book was mine, and he didn't get to destroy what was mine just because I wasn't performing the way he wanted. He dropped to the bathroom floor and pressed his hands into his hair. A raw, ugly sound came out of him. For 1 second, my mouth opened because he sounded so broken. His name sat right there, pressing against the back of my teeth. But even now, on the floor with tears on his face, he was crying because I wasn't talking to him, not because he hurt me. I pressed my lips shut and stepped over his legs. I leaned against the hallway wall and pressed my palm against my own chest like I was checking if anything was left. I had run out of time to keep waiting for an answer he was never going to give me. Jake insisted on the family dinner. We need to look normal. His brother Derek's house roared from the driveway, and Derek's wife Amy sat at the end of the table, cutting her son's food into small pieces without looking up when we walked in. Derek ordered food without asking anyone. When Amy reached for the bread basket, he said, she's watching her carbs, and slid it to the other end of the table, and she pulled her hand back like she'd touched a hot stove. He corrected her pronunciation of a word in front of everyone and laughed when she went quiet. Jake laughed too, the same laugh. My skin prickled because I watched 2 versions of the same man at the same table. After dinner, Amy washed dishes, and I picked up a towel and stood beside her and dried what she handed me. How long has he been like this? She asked without looking at me. Loud. Mine used to be loud too. Then I stopped talking back and he got louder to fill the space. She scrubbed a pot harder. He proposed on a beach. He was so sweet that first year. Now I asked permission to go to the grocery store. She dried her hands and looked at me, and her eyes were the saddest thing I'd seen in months. Don't get quiet like me. Quiet isn't the same as strong. I drove home gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers cramped, and at a red light I caught my own reflection in the window and saw Amy staring back at me, her pulled back hand, her practiced silence. I slammed my palm against the steering wheel hard enough to honk the horn. The test was supposed to show me who Jake was. Amy showed me who I was becoming. The lights went out. Jake ripped open the red envelope from the electric company and held it in my face. I flipped to the next chapter. The account was in my name. He couldn't fix it without me, and that was the whole point. He called the company and sat on hold for 45 minutes. The lights flickered at dinner, flickered again. Then the apartment went dark. Jake slammed both hands on the table. Are you happy? I took a sip of coffee in the dark, and the satisfaction of that moment scared me because I enjoyed it. That night, I got up for water and my shin caught the coffee table. I went down hard. My forehead hit the edge of the counter, and the pain was white and instant. I pressed my hand to my head and felt blood running down my temple. Jake slept in the bedroom 10 feet away, and one word would bring him running. I grabbed a dish towel and pressed it against the cut. My hands trembled against the fabric. I sat on the kitchen floor bleeding in the dark because I would rather bleed than break the silence for a man who still hadn't said sorry. I pressed the towel harder and stared at the dark ceiling. This started as a test, and I was the one sitting in the dark with blood on my face. I didn't know if I was proving a point or proving Amy right. He told me he was having people over because he wanted them to see that everything was fine. 5 friends showed up. Dev told a story and stood up to act it out. The laughter started small and built. Brianna bent over the arm of the couch, wheezing the exact same way she did at the party. Dev stood in the middle of the room with a drink in one hand and the other in the air doing a face. 5 people leaned in. My chest tightened tightened because that warmth used to be mine. Jake killed it, and now someone else carried it. Jake watched someone else stand where I used to stand. Must be nice being the funny guy. Dev's smile dropped. I'm just telling a story, man. Leah walked in behind Dev and crossed her arms. You screamed at her in front of 12 people for telling a story. She's showing you what your life sounds like without her in it. She said it. She said the answer out loud. She handed it to him on a plate. Jake grabbed the vase off the windowsill and hurled it against the wall. Glass and dead petals exploded across the living room. He shoved Dev backward into the bookshelf. That was his response. Leah gave him the answer to the test and he threw a vase. The others grabbed their things and left, and Leah mouthed, "Call me," from the doorway. Jake stood in the middle of his destroyed living room with glass on the floor and water running down the wall. I closed my book. He'd had weeks. He'd had the car ride and the shrimp and the work dinner and the flowers and the bathroom floor and Leah spelling it out to his face. He was never going to figure it out because he didn't think he did anything wrong. I walked to the bedroom and pulled a suitcase out from under the bed. I packed the book with the cracked spine that he threw at the wall. The lipstick he didn't throw. I left the dead flowers on the windowsill. I carried the suitcase to the front door and looked back one last time. Glass on the floor, red streak on the bathroom mirror, the apartment that used to be mine. I picked up the suitcase and walked out. He came home from work and half the closet hung empty. My toothbrush was gone. My books were gone. Olive's bowl was gone from the kitchen floor. Olive meowed for food one morning in my new apartment, and I said, okay, and froze mid-step with the cat food scoop in my hand because those were the first sounds I'd made in weeks. They came out scratchy and raw and wrong like my voice had rusted. Olive looked up at me, and I said it again. Okay. My voice cracked on the second syllable, but it was there. It was mine. I stood in my kitchen holding a cat food scoop with tears running down my face because the first word I said after weeks of silence was to my cat, not to Jake, not to my mom, to the cat. And it felt like opening a window in a house that had been sealed shut for a month. I called my mom that afternoon, and her voice cracked the second she heard mine. Oh, honey. Oh, thank God. I told her everything. The party and the silence and the shrimp and the blood on my forehead in the dark. She listened for 20 minutes without interrupting, and her breathing got heavier during the parts that hurt. I'm so proud of you. I didn't even say anything. Exactly. I put on lipstick in my own bathroom mirror before I left, the red one, the same shade that left a streak on Jake's mirror. Leah threw a housewarming party with 20 people and fairy lights on the ceiling and wine on every surface. Leah pulled me to the center of the room. Cora has a story. 20 faces turned toward me, and I took a sip of wine, and the warmth loosened something in my throat that had been locked tight for weeks. So the waiter comes back with the wrong plate for the third time. Leah grabbed my arm. Dev leaned forward. Nobody interrupting. Nobody telling me to shut up. And my mom stands up and says, "Sir, I have been patient, but if you bring me another piece of salmon, I am going to set this restaurant on fire." The room fell apart. The front door opened. Jake stood in the doorway. The room went silent. He looked thinner, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes red, and he looked like the apartment he destroyed. Cora, I held his eyes for 1 second. My heart hammered. My hands tightened on the wine glass. Part of me wanted to cross those 15 feet because part of me still remembered who he was before the party. My fingers loosened on the glass. I turned back to the room, and the waiter goes, "Ma'am, this is your salmon." One person laughed, then another, then the whole room. And my mom looks down at the plate and goes, "Well, it's terrible." 20 people jumped to their feet, and I stood in the center grinning so hard my cheeks ached, delivering the joke he killed at the party I spent all day setting up for him. Jake stood in the doorway for 10 seconds. Nobody invited him in. Nobody stopped laughing. He pulled the door shut, and the laughter swallowed the sound of it closing. Leah leaned into my ear. His mom came to see me last week. She told me Jake's dad used to do the same thing to her at parties. I stopped mid-breath. She said, "You're the first one who actually broke the pattern." I looked at the closed door. He never figured it out. He had weeks and a work dinner and a bathroom floor and Leah spelling it out to his face, and he never once said the words. I faced the 20 people waiting for whatever came next. Okay, so this one is about my dad at the DMV. The room leaned in. I wasn't waiting for Jake's answer anymore. I already had mine.
You don't need a speaker. Your phone's real volume.
Cool. Well, guys, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.